2:47 a.m. A red Ferrari pulled into the gas station under the quiet night. A young heiress stepped out, exhausted after a party, only to panic when she realized she'd forgotten both her wallet and phone. The attendant sneered, accusing her of showing off. Suddenly, an older man stepped forward, quietly handing over $73 and walked away. She had no idea that this small act of kindness would set in motion a story that would change both their lives forever. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. The red Ferrari pulled into the Shell station at 2:47 a.m., its engine purring like a satisfied cat. Behind the wheel sat Emma Richardson, 22, her designer dress slightly wrinkled from the night's festivities. Her blonde hair was perfectly tousled in that expensive way that screams money, and her makeup was still flawless despite hours of dancing at her friend's rooftop party. She stumbled slightly as she got out, not from alcohol but from the weight of exhaustion that comes with living a life that looks perfect from the outside but feels hollow within. The heels of her Christian Louboutin pumps clicked against the concrete as she approached the pump. Premium, obviously, she muttered to herself, inserting the nozzle into her car's tank. The numbers on the display climbed $47, $52, $67, $73, 50 cents. Emma reached into her Hermes bag, her perfectly manicured fingers searching for her wallet. She checked again, more frantically this time. Her heart sank as reality hit her. She'd left everything at Madison's place. Wallet, phone, everything. "Ma'am, you need to pay," the gas station attendant called out. He was a thin man in his 30s, wearing a name tag that read Rick. His tone suggested this wasn't his first encounter with someone who couldn't pay. "I forgot my wallet," Emma said, trying to maintain her composure. "I can come back tomorrow morning with lady. Do you think this is a charity?" Rick's voice rose, attracting the attention of the few other customers in the store. "You roll up here in your fancy car, wearing clothes that probably cost more than I make in a month, and you expect me to believe you can't pay for gas." Emma's cheeks flushed red. She wasn't used to being spoken to this way. In her world, problems like this were solved with a phone call or a credit card. But standing there at 2:47 a.m. with no way to reach anyone, she felt smaller than she had in years. "I'm not trying to scam anyone," she said, her voice quieter now. "I genuinely forgot." "Sure you did," Rick interrupted. "Another rich kid playing games. I've seen your type before. All flash, no cash when it counts." The other customers were staring now. Emma felt their judgmental eyes burning into her, and for the first time in her privileged life, she understood what it felt like to be truly helpless. That's when she heard footsteps behind her. "Excuse me, son." The voice belonged to a man Emma hadn't noticed before. He was African American, probably in his 50s, wearing work clothes that had seen better days. His hands were calloused from years of manual labor, and there was something about his calm demeanor that immediately commanded respect. "How much does she owe?" the man asked Rick. $73.50, Rick replied, his tone slightly less aggressive now. Without hesitation, the older man reached into his wallet, a worn leather thing held together with tape, and pulled out bills. Ones, fives, tens, and a single 20. He counted slowly, methodically, until he had exact change. Emma watched in stunned silence as this complete stranger paid her debt. She'd never experienced anything like this before. In her world, people helped others because they wanted something in return, a favor, a connection, a business opportunity. But this man was asking for nothing. "Sir, you don't have to," she began. "It's already done," he said simply, handing the money to Rick. "Everyone needs help sometimes." Rick took the cash reluctantly, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was witnessing either. The man turned to Emma. "You're all set, miss. Drive safely." But as he started to walk away, Emma's pride kicked in. She couldn't let this slide. She couldn't owe someone she saw as beneath her social status. "Wait," she called out, her voice sharp with a mixture of gratitude and indignation. "I need to pay you back." The man stopped and turned around, his expression patient. Emma fumbled for something to write on, finally grabbing a receipt from her car. She scribbled down her address, a mansion in the most exclusive part of town. "Come here tomorrow," she said, thrusting the paper at him. Her tone was businesslike, cold. "I'll pay you back 10 times what you gave me. I don't need charity." The man looked at the address, then back at her. He didn't seem impressed by the exclusive zip code or the implied wealth behind it. Instead he smiled, not mockingly, but with something that looked almost like understanding. "That's very kind of you," he said quietly, pocketing the paper. "But I didn't do it for the money." And with that he walked back to his beat-up pickup truck and drove into the night, leaving Emma standing by her Ferrari with more questions than answers. 3 days later, he'd been working landscaping jobs for over 20 years, and this was supposed to be just another routine maintenance call. The address the property management company had given him was in Millbrook Estates, the kind of neighborhood where houses had names instead of just numbers, and driveways were longer than most city blocks. But as he pulled his trailer full of equipment through the ornate gates, that flash of red in the circular driveway made him do a double take. "No way," he thought. "What are the odds?" Marcus parked his truck and began unloading his tools. He'd been hired to maintain the grounds of this particular mansion, all 3 acres of it, for the next 6 months. The property was immaculate, the kind of place that appeared in architectural magazines, with manicured lawns that looked more like green carpets and flower beds arranged with mathematical precision. As he worked, Marcus couldn't help but think about that night at the gas station. The girl had been so angry, so determined to turn his simple act of kindness into a transaction. He'd seen that look before, the look of someone who's never learned that the best things in life can't be bought or sold. Around noon, as he was edging the walkway near the front entrance, the door opened. "Maria, could you bring me?" The voice stopped mid-sentence. Emma Richardson stood in the doorway, her mouth slightly open in surprise. She was dressed more casually today, designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than Marcus made in a week, but her expression was the same mixture of pride and vulnerability he remembered from the gas station. "You," she said simply. "Miss," Marcus nodded politely, not stopping his work. Emma disappeared back into the house, and for a moment Marcus thought that would be the end of it. But 5 minutes later, she returned with a thick envelope in her hand. "Here," she said, holding it out to him. $735, 10 times what I owed you, just like I promised. Marcus straightened up and looked at her. "Miss, I told you at the station, I didn't do it for the money." "Everyone does everything for money," Emma replied, her voice hard. "Just take it and go." "I can't do that." "Why not?" Marcus set down his edging tool and wiped his hands on a rag. "Because I'm here to work. Your property management company hired me to maintain these grounds for the next 6 months. If I took money from you now, it wouldn't be right." Emma stared at him, clearly frustrated. In her world, money solved problems. Money made people go away when she wanted them to. Money bought silence, compliance, and distance. But this man was refusing to play by her rules. "I don't want you working here," she said finally. "That's not your decision to make." Marcus replied gently. "I signed a contract with Millbrook Property Management. If you have a problem with my work, you'll need to take it up with them." Before Emma could respond, an older Hispanic woman appeared in the doorway. "Miss Emma," the woman said in accented English, "your lunch is ready." "Not now, Maria," Emma snapped, never taking her eyes off Marcus, but Marcus turned to the housekeeper with a warm smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Marcus Williams, I'll be taking care of the grounds here." Maria smiled back. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Williams. The gardens are beautiful, you do good work." "Thank you," Marcus said. "The previous company set a high standard. I'll do my best to maintain it." Emma watched this exchange with something like bewilderment. She'd never seen anyone treat the staff with such genuine respect, not as servants, but as people worthy of courtesy and kindness. "Maria," Emma said suddenly, "you can go inside now." But as Maria turned to leave, she paused and looked back at Marcus. There was something in her expression, a knowing look that suggested she had more to say but knew better than to say it in front of Emma. Emma slammed the door, leaving Marcus alone with his work and his thoughts, but through the large windows of the mansion, he could see her watching him. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus learned the rhythm of the Richardson estate. Emma's mother, Victoria Richardson, was almost never home. According to Maria, who had become quite chatty during their brief encounters. Mrs. Richardson was a tech mogul who'd built her empire from nothing after her husband died in a car accident when Emma was 7. The woman worked 18-hour days and traveled constantly, building data centers and acquiring smaller companies with ruthless efficiency. Emma, meanwhile, kept irregular hours. Sometimes Marcus would arrive at dawn to find her car already gone. Other times, he'd be working late into the evening and see her return from whatever had occupied her day, parties, shopping, or just driving around aimlessly. But there was one constant: every afternoon around 3 p.m., Emma would appear in the backyard and sit on the swing set. It was an odd thing, a simple wooden swing set in the corner of an otherwise perfectly landscaped yard. It looked out of place among the marble fountains and imported rose gardens, like a memory someone couldn't bear to remove. Marcus had been curious about it, but it wasn't until Maria brought him a glass of water one particularly hot afternoon that he learned the story. Mr. Richardson built that for Emma when she was 5, Maria explained, glancing toward the swing where Emma sat motionless, staring out at nothing in particular. After he died, Mrs. Richardson wanted to tear it down. Said it took up too much space, but Emma, she threw such a fit. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't go to school. Finally, Mrs. Richardson gave up. Marcus watched Emma on the swing. From a distance, she looked like the child she must have been 15 years ago, small, alone, lost. She sits there every day, he asked. Every day, Maria confirmed. Sometimes for hours, just thinking, I guess. That afternoon, as Marcus worked on the flower beds near the swing set, he found himself talking. Not to Emma directly, she hadn't spoken to him since their confrontation 2 weeks earlier, but just talking. The way people sometimes do when they need to fill silence. You know, he said, kneeling among the roses, I once knew a little girl who had the whole world but felt like she had nothing. Emma didn't respond, but Marcus noticed she'd stopped swinging. This little girl lived in a big house with everything money could buy, he continued, his hands working steadily in the soil. But her daddy was gone, and her mama was so busy trying to keep the world from falling apart that she forgot her little girl needed her more than anyone else. Still no response, but Marcus could feel Emma listening. So this little girl got angry. Real angry. She figured if she caused enough trouble, if she was loud enough and wild enough, maybe her mama would notice, maybe her mama would come home. Marcus stood up, brushing dirt from his knees. But you know what happened instead? Silence. Marcus had turned to move to another section of the garden when Emma's voice stopped him. What happened? Her voice was small, younger than her 22 years. Marcus turned back. Emma was looking at him directly for the first time since that day at the front door. That's a story for another day, he said gently. Emma's face flushed with frustration. You can't just start a story and not finish it. Sure I can, Marcus said with a slight smile. Gives you something to look forward to tomorrow. The next afternoon, Emma was on the swing again when Marcus arrived. This time, she didn't wait for him to start talking. So what happened to the little girl? She asked without preamble. Marcus grinned as he unloaded his tools. Well, one day, this little girl met someone who saw right through all her anger to the hurt underneath, and you know what this person did? What? They loved her anyway, not because of her big house or her fancy things, but because everyone deserves to be loved. Even angry little girls who've forgotten how to ask for help. Emma was quiet for a long moment, and then what? Then the little girl realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. That's a stupid story, Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but sometimes stupid stories are the truest ones. It was then that Marcus noticed the bandages on Emma's wrists. They were mostly hidden by her long sleeves, but when she gripped the swing chains, the fabric rode up slightly. Without a word, Marcus reached into his toolkit and pulled out a small first aid kit. From it, he removed a band-aid, not a regular one, but one decorated with cartoon princesses. Here, he said, holding it out to her. These work better than regular bandages. Emma stared at the band-aid, then at Marcus. That's for little kids. Sometimes we all need to be little kids, Marcus said simply. Emma took the Band-Aid, her fingers trembling slightly. Why do you have these? Marcus was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft with old pain. I had a daughter, Sarah. She would have been about your age now. He paused, looking out over the manicured gardens. She loved these silly Band-Aids, said they had magic healing powers because they were pretty. Had, Emma asked quietly. Leukemia, Marcus said. She fought for 3 years, bravest little girl you ever saw. Every time she got hurt, and kids get hurt a lot when they're fighting that hard, she'd ask for her princess Band-Aids. Emma felt something break open in her chest. I'm sorry, so am I, Marcus said. But you know what Sarah taught me? She taught me that the smallest acts of love can mean everything. A silly Band-Aid. A bedtime story, showing up every day, even when it's hard. Emma looked down at the cartoon Band-Aid in her hand. Your wife, does she? There is no wife, Marcus said. Sarah's mama left when the hospital bills got too high. Said she couldn't handle watching her daughter die slowly. But you stayed. I stayed, right up until the end, and even after. Marcus smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. Sarah made me promise to keep helping people. Said her princess Band-Aids were too important to waste. Emma carefully peeled the backing off the Band-Aid and placed it over one of the cuts on her wrist. It looked ridiculous against her expensive clothing, but somehow it made her feel better than any designer accessory ever had. Marcus, she said, the first time she'd used his name. Yes. Thank you, for the gas station. For the story, for this. Marcus nodded. Everyone needs help sometimes, Emma, even angry little girls in big houses. That evening, Maria noticed something different when she served dinner. Miss Emma, she said carefully. You want me to call the landscaping company, ask them to send Mr. Williams more often. Emma looked up from her untouched meal. Why would you think that? No reason, Maria said with a knowing smile. Just thinking the gardens might need extra attention. Emma considered this. Actually yes, call them. Tell them I want him here every day. Every day, miss. Every day. What Emma didn't say was that for the first time in months, she was looking forward to tomorrow. But Maria, who had watched Emma grow up from a grieving child into an angry young woman, noticed something else. Emma had eaten almost half her dinner, and she was wearing a cartoon princess Band-Aid like a badge of honor. Victoria Richardson's private jet touched down at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks ahead of schedule. She'd been in Singapore, finalizing the acquisition of a cloud computing company, when her assistant called with disturbing news. According to the monthly report from Millbrook Property Management, there had been irregularities in the maintenance schedule at her home. The landscaping service was being called in daily instead of weekly, resulting in additional costs that needed her approval. But that wasn't what bothered Victoria. What bothered her was that Emma had made this decision. Emma, who had never shown interest in anything related to their home or its maintenance. Emma, who couldn't be trusted to remember to feed the koi fish in the pond, let alone manage property staff. Emma, who had been a constant source of worry and disappointment for the past 15 years. Victoria's black Mercedes pulled through the estate gates at 12:30 a.m. She expected the house to be dark, Emma either asleep or out at one of her endless parties. Instead, she was surprised to see lights on in the kitchen and Emma's car in the driveway. She found her daughter sitting at the kitchen island, textbooks spread around her, actually studying. Emma, Victoria said, startling her daughter. What are you doing? Emma looked up, a mixture of surprise and guilt crossing her face. Mom, I thought you were in Singapore until next month. Plans changed. Victoria set down her briefcase and really looked at her daughter for the first time in months. Emma appeared, different, healthier, somehow. Less of that hard edge that had defined her for so long. Are you studying? Victoria asked, unable to hide her surprise. Emma blushed. I'm trying to finish my degree. I only need 12 more credits. This was news to Victoria. As far as she knew, Emma had dropped out of USC 2 years ago and shown no interest in returning. What changed? Victoria asked. Emma hesitated. I realized I was wasting my life. Before Victoria could respond, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. There, on the granite countertop next to Emma's textbooks, was a thick envelope, and sticking out of it, Victoria could see cash. "Emma," Victoria said, her voice sharp. "What is that money for?" Emma followed her mother's gaze and quickly tried to cover the envelope. "It's nothing, just, don't lie to me." Victoria snatched the envelope before Emma could stop her. Inside was $735 in cash, along with a handwritten note that read, "For your kindness. Thank you for everything." "Emma Richardson," Victoria said, her voice rising. "What is this money for?" "Mom, it's not what you think. I think you're paying someone for something you shouldn't be paying for." Victoria's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Drugs, gambling debts, blackmail. Who is it? Who's taking advantage of you? "Nobody's taking advantage of me." "Then explain this." Emma stood up, her chair scraping against the marble floor. "Why do you always assume the worst about me?" "Because you've given me every reason to." Victoria shot back. "Dropping out of school, crashing cars, that incident at the country club. That was 2 years ago. And now this." Victoria waved the envelope. "Cash payments to God knows who for God knows what. It's for the landscaper." Emma shouted. "Are you happy?" "I'm trying to pay back the landscaper." Victoria stared at her daughter. "Pay him back for what?" Emma's anger deflated slightly. She sank back into her chair, suddenly looking very young. "He helped me when I was in trouble. I just wanted to return the favor." "What kind of trouble?" So Emma told her, about the gas station, about forgetting her wallet, about Marcus paying for her gas without being asked, about how he'd refused to take her money, how he'd been working on their property for weeks without accepting any form of repayment. Victoria listened with growing concern. In her world, people didn't do things without expecting something in return. Every kindness had a price, every favor came with strings attached. The idea of a manual laborer helping her daughter and refusing payment seemed not just unlikely but impossible. "Emma," she said carefully, "are you sure he hasn't asked for anything? No requests for loans or help with bills, or?" "No, Mom, nothing like that." "Then what does he want?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "I think he just wants to help." Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. In her experience, people who claimed to just want to help were usually the most dangerous of all. "I want to meet him," she said. "Mom, no, tomorrow. I want to meet this man who's been spending so much time with my daughter." The next morning, Marcus arrived at his usual time to find an unfamiliar black Mercedes parked in the driveway. He was unloading his equipment when the front door opened and 2 women emerged. Emma looked nervous, fidgeting with the envelope she'd been trying to give him for weeks. Beside her stood a woman who could only be her mother, same bone structure, same blonde hair, but with an edge that spoke of boardrooms and hostile takeovers. "Mr. Williams," Victoria Richardson said, her voice crisp and professional. "I'm Victoria Richardson. I believe you know my daughter." "Mom," Marcus said politely, removing his work gloves. "Pleasure to meet you. I understand you've been generous with Emma." Marcus glanced at Emma, who looked like she wanted to disappear. "I'm not sure what you mean." Victoria held up the envelope. "My daughter tells me you paid for her gas and refused to be repaid. I find that interesting." "Not much to find interesting about helping someone in need," Marcus replied. "Isn't there?" Victoria's smile was razor sharp. "In my experience, Mr. Williams, everyone wants something. The question is what you want from my daughter." Marcus looked from mother to daughter, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Mrs. Richardson, I think there's been a misunderstanding, has there? You spend weeks working here, befriending my daughter, refusing payment for a supposed kindness. What's the end game?" Emma stepped forward. "Mom, stop. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Victoria turned to Marcus. "How much?" "Excuse me, how much will it take for you to stay away from my daughter?" 10,000, 20. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Mom, I'm not sure what you think is happening here. I think a middle-aged man is taking advantage of a vulnerable young woman. I think you saw an opportunity, and you're playing a long game. So I'll ask again, what's your price?" The words hung in the air like a slap. Marcus had faced prejudice before, subtle looks, assumptions about his capabilities, people who crossed the street when they saw him coming. But he'd never experienced anything quite this direct, this brutal. "I don't have a price," he said quietly. "Everyone has a price." "No ma'am, they don't." Emma was watching this exchange with growing horror. She could see the hurt in Marcus's eyes, the way her mother's words were cutting him down. This man who had shown her more genuine kindness in 3 weeks than she'd received from most people in her entire life was being treated like a predator. "You want to know why he won't take the money?" Emma said suddenly, her voice shaking. "Emma, don't," Marcus started. "Because his daughter died," Emma shouted. "His daughter died of cancer and his wife left him, and all he has left is trying to help people. That's why he paid for my gas. That's why he tells me stories and gives me stupid cartoon band-aids and makes me feel like maybe I'm not completely worthless." Victoria stared at her daughter, then at Marcus. The silence stretched between them like a gulf. "Emma," Victoria said carefully, "go inside." "No, that wasn't a request, and I'm not a child." Emma's voice cracked. "I'm 22 years old and I'm tired of you treating me like I don't matter. You do matter. That's why I'm protecting you." "From what?" "From the first person in years who's treated me like a human being instead of a problem to be solved." Victoria's face flushed with anger. "You think I don't care about you? I think you care about controlling me." Emma shot back. "When's the last time you asked me how I was feeling? When's the last time you were home for more than 2 days? When's the last time you treated me like a daughter instead of a liability? Everything I do is for you." "No," Emma screamed. "Everything you do is for your company, for your image, for everyone except me." The words echoed across the pristine landscape. Marcus stood frozen, watching this family implode in front of him. He'd seen enough pain to recognize it, and right now he was seeing 22 years of it pouring out of Emma like water through a broken dam. "You want to know why I crashed those cars?" Emma continued, tears streaming down her face. "Why I got kicked out of that club, why I dropped out of school. Because I wanted you to notice. I wanted you to come home and be my mother instead of my CEO." Victoria's face had gone pale. "Emma, but it didn't work, did it?" "Nothing worked, because the only thing you care about is money and success and making sure everyone knows how powerful Victoria Richardson is." Emma turned to Marcus, her eyes blazing with a mixture of pain and determination. "And then this man, this stranger, showed me more kindness in one night than you've shown me in years. He asked for nothing. He expected nothing. He just helped because that's who he is." She grabbed the envelope from her mother's hands and thrust it at Marcus. "Take it, please. Let me do one decent thing in my pathetic excuse for a life." Marcus looked at the envelope, then at Emma's tear-stained face, then at Victoria, who looked like she'd been slapped. "I can't take your money, Emma," he said gently, "but you've already done something decent. You've opened your heart. That's worth more than anything in that envelope." Emma broke down completely then, sobbing in a way that spoke of years of suppressed pain. Without thinking, Marcus stepped forward and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay," he said softly. "You're going to be okay." Victoria watched this stranger comfort her daughter who hadn't let Victoria hug her in years, and felt something crack inside her chest. "I should call the police," she said, but her voice had lost all its authority. Marcus looked at her over Emma's head. "You can do that, Mrs. Richardson. But before you do, let me ask you something. When's the last time you saw your daughter smile? Really smile?" Victoria opened her mouth to answer and found she couldn't. She literally could not remember. "Because I've seen her smile," Marcus continued, "when she was telling me about the swing set her daddy built. When she was talking about getting back into school, when she was planning all the ways she wanted to make you proud. She said that. She says that every day. Every single day she talks about how she wants to make you proud, how she wants to be worthy of being Victoria Richardson's daughter." Victoria felt tears she hadn't shed in years threatening to spill over. "Then why?" "Because she doesn't know how," Marcus said simply, "and neither do you." Emma had stopped crying and was listening now, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Mrs. Richardson," Marcus continued, "you've built an empire. You've succeeded in ways most people can't even imagine. But you're about to lose the most important thing you have." "What's that?" Marcus said, nodding toward Emma. "You're about to lose her. And once that happens, all the money in the world won't buy her back." Victoria looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the rebellious disappointment she'd been dealing with for years, but a young woman desperate for love, desperate for connection, desperate to matter to the one person whose opinion meant everything. "Emma," Victoria said softly. Emma looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "I'm sorry," Victoria said. "I'm so sorry." And for the first time in 15 years, Emma Richardson let her mother hug her. Marcus quietly picked up his tools and began loading them back into his truck. "Where are you going?" Emma asked, pulling away from her mother. "I think you two need some time to talk," Marcus said. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Marcus looked at Victoria, who nodded slowly. "If you want me to," he said. "I want you to," Emma said. Then looking at her mother, she added, "We want you to." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mr. Williams, would you like to stay for lunch? I think I owe you an apology." "A real one," Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd shown since Victoria's arrival. "I'd like that, Mrs. Richardson. I'd like that very much." As they walked toward the house together, the tech mogul, her broken daughter, and the landscaper who had somehow managed to start healing a family, none of them noticed Maria watching from the kitchen window, tears streaming down her face and a prayer of gratitude on her lips. 6 months later, the auditorium at USC was packed with families celebrating another graduation ceremony. In the third row, Victoria Richardson sat with her phone turned off for the first time in anyone's memory, watching the stage with an intensity that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with love. Beside her sat Marcus Williams, wearing the first suit he'd bought in 20 years. On his lapel was a small pin, a cartoon princess that Sarah would have loved. "Emma Richardson," the dean announced, and Victoria's heart swelled as her daughter walked across the stage. Emma had graduated summa cum laude, with a degree in psychology and a minor in social work. More importantly, she had graduated as someone who understood the difference between being helped and being loved. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, arguments, and moments when the old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But slowly, painstakingly, mother and daughter had learned to see each other as people rather than problems. Victoria had restructured her entire life, promoting her COO to CEO and stepping back to focus on being present. Not just physically present, she'd tried that before, but emotionally present, available, willing to listen without immediately trying to fix or control. Emma had thrown herself into her studies and into therapy, working through years of anger and abandonment. She'd also started volunteering at a children's hospital, where she discovered that cartoon band-aids really did have magical healing powers. And Marcus had become something neither of them had expected: family. Not in a romantic sense, there was never anything inappropriate about their relationship, but in the way that sometimes strangers become the people who save you when you need saving most. He'd been there for Emma's panic attacks and Victoria's boardroom breakdowns. He'd taught them both that love wasn't something you earned through achievement, but something you gave and received, simply by being human. After the ceremony, they gathered in the Richardson backyard for a small celebration. The gardens had never looked better. Marcus had expanded far beyond his original contract, adding new flower beds and a vegetable garden where Emma grew tomatoes and herbs. The swing set was still there, but now it was joined by a small memorial garden where Marcus had planted white roses in Sarah's memory. Emma had suggested it, and Victoria had paid for it, but it was Marcus who tended it with the care of someone who understood that some things were more valuable than money. "I have something to say," Emma announced as they sat around the patio table, sharing a meal that Maria had prepared with extra love. Victoria felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. Old habits died hard, and she still sometimes expected the worst from unexpected announcements. But Emma was smiling, that real smile Marcus had asked about months ago, the one Victoria now saw every day. "I got a job," Emma said. "That's wonderful, honey," Victoria said. "Where?" "Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. I'm going to be working with families of kids who have terminal illnesses, helping them navigate the system and find resources." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Emma, I know," she said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "I know it's going to be hard. But Sarah taught me something through you. She taught me that even in the darkest times, the smallest acts of love can make all the difference." Victoria watched her daughter and the man who had saved their family and felt a gratitude so profound it took her breath away. "Emma, are you sure you're ready for something that intense?" "I'm sure," Emma said, "because I have the best teacher in the world." She turned to Marcus.
You showed me that healing isn't about having all the answers. It's about showing up. It's about being present with people in their pain, and helping them remember they're not alone. Marcus wiped his eyes, not caring who saw him cry. Sarah would be so proud of you. I hope so, Emma said, because I'm going to carry her band-aids with me every day. And every time I give one to a scared little kid, I'm going to tell them about a brave girl named Sarah who taught a grumpy landscaper how to save broken families. Marcus laughed through his tears. She wasn't grumpy, she was just selective about her friendships. Like father, like daughter, Victoria said softly. Emma stood up, raising her glass of lemonade. I want to propose a toast. Everyone gathered around. Victoria, Marcus, Maria, and even the property manager who had stopped by to congratulate Emma on her graduation. To second chances, Emma said, to strangers who become family, to mothers who learn to love without controlling, to daughters who learn to receive love without earning it, and to a little girl named Sarah who's probably up there somewhere, laughing at how her silly band-aids changed everything. To Sarah, Marcus whispered. To Sarah, Victoria echoed. To Sarah, Maria added, wiping her eyes with her apron. As they clinked glasses in the golden California sunshine, surrounded by gardens that had grown from a simple act of kindness at a gas station, none of them could have imagined how far they'd traveled from that night 6 months ago. But Marcus knew something the others were still learning, that love, real love, isn't something you can buy or earn or steal. It's something you give freely, without expecting anything in return. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it comes back to you in ways you never expected. Like a broken girl who becomes a healer, like a grieving father who finds a new family, like a successful woman who discovers that her greatest achievement isn't her company, but her relationship with her daughter. 3 months later, Emma sent Marcus a photo from the hospital. It showed her placing a cartoon princess band-aid on the arm of a 6-year-old boy who was smiling despite the IV tubes in his arm. The text read, "Sarah's magic is still working. Thank you for teaching me how to pass it on." Marcus showed the photo to Victoria, who had stopped by to bring him lunch, a new tradition they'd started. "You know what the most amazing part of this story is?" Victoria said. "What's that?" "You paid $73.50 for gas, and somehow that turned into saving 3 lives. Marcus smiled, looking out over the garden where Emma was playing with Maria's grandchildren, her laughter carrying across the lawn like music. "Best investment I ever made," he said. And in the children's ward of Los Angeles Children's Hospital, a little boy named Tyler was showing his mom his new band-aid, the one with the pretty princess on it. "The nice lady said it has magic powers," Tyler told his worried mother. "What kind of magic?" his mom asked, trying not to cry. "The kind that reminds you that you're not alone," Tyler said, with the wisdom that only sick children possess. "The kind that tells you someone cares about you even if they don't know your name." Tyler's mother looked at the small cartoon band-aid and felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Because sometimes the smallest acts of love really do change everything. Sometimes a stranger at a gas station becomes the person who saves your life. Sometimes a cartoon band-aid carries the power to heal more than cuts and scrapes. And sometimes, if you're very, very lucky, you get the chance to pass that magic on to someone else who needs it. That's the real miracle of Marcus Williams, Emma Richardson, and Sarah's princess band-aids. Not that they found each other, but that they chose to keep finding each other, every single day, in all the small ways that matter most.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.